What is going on, everybody? I just walked out of watching Madam Web at the theater, and I gotta say this movie completely lived up to the hype. Unfortunately for the movie and for the Sony SpiderMan Universe that doesn't actually have a Spider-Man in it, the hype was that it's one of the worst comic book movies we've seen in recent memory, and I'd have to agree. And that's saying a lot. We've seen a lot of bad things out there. Certainly 2024, off to a rough start. Echo on Disney Plus, and now the next superhero thing we have is Madam Web, released on Valentine's Day. I have to be honest that this movie, from when we first saw the trailer, when we first saw the teaser, it looked like it wasn't necessarily going to be like full of identity politics necessarily. It was just going to be a bad product. And I think from the writing to the acting to the editing to even some of the audio stuff in this, it just feels like it's a little bit amateurish production. The idea of a CW type of production as opposed to what people would have been used to on like more network television. You know, maybe a little bit cheaper, maybe not as qualified people working on the CW shows as you had working on some of the network television stuff. That's the way that this came off. And it feels bad in the same way that Morbius was bad. It's cringe and stupid. And at times, obviously, some of the stuff they're trying to do with special effects doesn't look like they had enough money maybe to quite do it the way they would have wanted to do it. And at the end of the day, these are characters. All the characters in this, the biggest sin of this movie is that it's supposed to be a superhero movie but there's no superheroes in it. It's all about, oh, in the future, they will become superheroes. And so spoiler warning for this right now. Just going to get out of the way. I don't think too many people worry about being spoiled by Madam Web, but spoilers. Every shot you see of all the girls, of all the different Spider Women, it's from a potential vision. It's from a potential future that they may have. None of it actually takes place during this movie itself. So that's one of the things I kind of guessed from the trailer. It's going to be really disappointing if you never get to see any of these people in their suits the entire time. And that's kind of what it ends up being. You know, Cassandra Webb is a character who it's kind of supposed to come off as very unlikable. So he doesn't like kids. So he doesn't get along with really anybody. And you're supposed to see this change throughout in the course. And by the end, she's doing everything she can to protect these girls. And, I don't have any problem necessarily with Dakota Johnson as an actress. I think she falls pretty flat in this specific performance. I think it's a little bland. I don't think it's great. So that's kind of tough when she's the main protagonist in this entire story. I think the villain is, you know, so one-dimensional. And the thing that bothers me about Ezekiel as a villain in general is not anything to do with the story, but it's the audio. When you watch this, there's something going on with his audio. I don't know if he had to re-record a bunch of lines. I don't know if they didn't sync it up right. It seems like all of his stuff is ADR, and ADR done really poorly, where sometimes it's like his voice is not matching up to what he's saying, and it just comes off as strange. Maybe it's the way the audio was edited in. I don't know. It bugged me. Maybe it was just my theater, but you guys can let me know in the comments below if you were one of the few people that actually did go and see this movie. But the Sony Spider-Man universe with no Spider-Man continues to suffer from the fact that these characters, unless you do the story really well, I feel like it's going to be hard for them to stand on their own. And a movie like Madam Web, which is about not one, but four potential different spider heroes, and then one spider villain, in a universe that doesn't actually have a Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's not tied into the story, man, it's tough to give a fuck about any of these characters. And this movie is set in the early 2000s. You get introduced to Ben Parker. You get introduced to May Parker, Peter Parker's mom. Richard is mentioned. His dad is mentioned. Peter Parker is boring during this movie, and they can't say his name because they don't have the rights to it. They can't say Aunt May's name because they probably don't have the rights to it. So when you're trying to walk around and tiptoe around these things that people obviously, like, you want to make a part of your story, but you can't officially make it a part of your story, the question becomes, why did you even tell this story to begin with? And overall, Madam Web, to me, falls flat in just about every aspect, from acting to the story itself to some of the dialogue, and the fact that it's advertised as a superhero movie, and pretty much all the shots of the girls in the superhero costumes that you saw in the trailer, that's pretty much all that you get from this movie. So it lived up to the hype. you know, most people thought this was going to be one of the worst superhero movies we've seen in a while. And it was, and it really had everything to do with execution and not so much to do with the message they're trying to hammer you over the head with. It really was just, in my opinion, a really bad movie. What do you guys think about this? I do not recommend going to see this movie. Let me know what you think about this in the comments section below, and I'll talk to you later.